We've come to the end of this year's Vasa retreat, 3 months monastic retreat. People often are asking the question, how do we practice mindfulness in daily life, or how can we be more mindful in daily life? Well, this is one of the places where you practice that. In a monastery, Buddhist monastery is set up for that. It's the way the Buddha and our teacher Ajahn Kalyano encouraged us to practice as Sangha, using the Vinaya, the monastic discipline, and the Dhamma, the teachings pointing to the truth. We use that to guide us in how we practice in a monastery. And a monastery is a quiet place, secluded from much of the hustle and bustle of the world. So it's a very ideal place to practice mindfulness. It supports mindfulness. So we've been practicing for 3 months as a community, and you've been joining us sometimes. What makes a monastery suitable partly is the commitment of those living here. It requires commitment to live in a quiet place. It's actually easier to live in a busy place where you maybe have more stimulation, more things to do, more distractions. And we also have the Vinaya training in a monastery, the monastic discipline, which requires this quality of commitment or giving up to the way of practice, the rules, the training rules, centered around the Patimokkha for the monks, 227 rules, but many, many more rules outside of that. From the greater part of the Vinaya you find in the Tripitaka, the Buddhist texts. Many, many rules. Many of them laid down by the Buddha, but also some may be specific to each monastic community, such as Ajahn Kalyano and his Sangha, a certain amount of kind of rules which we set up just to help us live together in harmony, to promote good values, good standards of behaviour in the monastery, but taking on the principles for good practice that the Buddha gave. And the Buddha said, well, the purpose of establishing the Vinaya is to give us a method or a way, the tools that we need to help us abandon mental defilements rooted in greed, anger and delusion, and to cultivate the path, the Eightfold Noble Path, Sila, Samadhi, Panya, but also to provide convenience for anyone who comes into a monastery. If you have a standard of behaviour, of conduct, discipline that everybody agrees to follow, then everyone benefits. It makes the place peaceful, safe, conducive to the practice of mindfulness and developing insight into the truth, the deeper truth, that help us abandon these mental defilements. And the monastic discipline also encourages the qualities of contentment. Buddhist monks, we live quite simply. Just have our simple requisites, our bowl, our robes, simple dwelling place and simple medicines for when we're sick. Encourages us to be easy to look after, so we're not always demanding things from the laity. Encourages us to be harmless, not being aggressive, violent, or taking advantage of other people. Being honest, we're scrupulous, we don't steal, we don't fiddle taxes, because we don't pay any anyway, because we don't have any income. But we don't steal, and so on. It makes the monastery very peaceful and suitable to practice. And the Buddha called the Vinaya the lifeblood of the religion. And you'll note when people don't follow the monastic discipline in a monastery, well, the monastery becomes more chaotic, confusing, less suitable for the practice. And that applies to the laity as well. So if you're a lay visitor to a monastery, or you keep the 8 precepts, and at home the 5 precepts, that's the lay Vinaya, or the heart of it. Whether you're a lay person or a monk, the basic level of discipline, whatever level you're practicing, this keeps the teachings alive. We call it the lifeblood. It keeps the religion, the practice of the religion alive, because keeping the Vinaya makes you mindful. And that quality of mindfulness makes you pay attention to your mind, and by paying attention you can see where suffering comes from and what to do about it, how to abandon it. And it gives you training, rules and ways of practice that help you do that. Like if you live in a monastery, one thing Ajahn Chah emphasized is the coming together as a group when there's a meeting or a work period or an activity. We come together as a group, we come together at the same time, we leave at the same time. To give value or respect to that, because that's a way of training. Especially if you live together with a large number of people, then if everyone agrees to come together when there's a group activity, that's for the benefit of the whole community. Creates harmony, and we support each other. If you're doing a job of work and there's other people around you also doing it, then you tend to put more effort in, don't you? Same with meditation. If you have a group meditation, you see other people meditating, you tend to try harder. So even though the monastic setting is peaceful and conducive to practice, we also benefit from practicing together with other people in that setting. So many of the monks' rules and the monastic training rules are for bringing up harmony. The way Ajahn Chah set up the monastery, say we have a central store for the offerings that people make. Like monks, we don't have an income and we don't have a bank account, but people bring gifts, and we're very well supported in this day and age with food and robes and accommodation, the things we need. Probably have too much. But the way the monastery is run is, other Ajahn Chah monasteries, you have a central store and all the gifts of offerings of, say, robes and toiletries and other items that are offered, they go into a central store. And they're not owned by one particular monk. And there may be a store monk appointed, and then if you need something, you go to him. Say, I need this, I need that. You don't keep your own stores. We have a central kitchen, we have a central Sangha store. And that can be useful because it means you're not looking at other people in the community maybe with envy. Or if you do, it doesn't last very long because everybody owns the stores. But still there has to be a certain discipline in the way they're run. In the time of Ajahn Chah, like when I first became a novice monk and then a monk, the stores were much less than they are nowadays, the support. The monastic store was actually only opened officially once every 2 weeks. They had a big iron door, which there's no way you could force that open. So even if you wanted something, I don't think anyone ever tried to force it open, but if they did, it wasn't an easy door to open. So you had to wait. And there wasn't much to give out. You get a bar of soap, you wouldn't get much choice in the kind of toiletry products. You wouldn't be able to choose the brand of soap, the brand of toothpaste. You just got what you got. When you needed something, you asked. And maybe you didn't get what you wanted, or it wasn't available. Ajahn Chah's monastery was fairly well supported because it was long established, well known. People loved Ajahn Chah, so they were happy to bring gifts. Some of the branch monasteries weren't well supported. So my first Vasa retreat, 3-month retreat as a monk, I went to stay in the monastery of Lumpur Kun, who visited us here a few years ago. And the first day of the Vasa retreat, we were studying the Vinaya. There's only a few of us. There's like 3 monks and 2 novices, I think. A very small community. And we're studying the Vinaya. We're studying different rules, and one was like studying stealing, defining what stealing is. And one of the teachings was, well, you shouldn't take what is not given, even a blade of grass. So one of the monks said that would mean even a box of matches, which isn't worth very much. If someone offers a box of matches and it's on the shrine, you shouldn't just take it away. You should ask permission from another monk to take matches. And then one of the novices, who was a bit of a joker, he pointed out, well, we don't even have any matches, so it won't come up, this one. The monastery was so poor we didn't even have a box of matches. So we all agreed it wouldn't be a problem. We don't have to worry about stealing matches because we don't have any to steal. And we all got 2 torch batteries on the first day of the retreat, and those 2 torch batteries, in those days you use those big ones, D size. They had to last for 3 months. So you use them very sparingly. On a full moon night, you just walk by moonlight, and probably after about a month, they'd already worn out. Just try and keep them going as long as possible. So in that atmosphere, when there's very little, you really do look after your requisites. You value them. And that makes you very mindful, like your robes. Because there was no cloth available to replace robes. You really wanted to keep your robe because you only have one set. You want to keep them in good condition. So if you get a little hole, you have to patch it quickly, otherwise the hole would tear and get bigger. You tried not to get a hole in the first place. You have to be very careful where you put your robes down and not to get them caught on a thorn in the forest. And when you study the Vinaya, the monastic discipline, you realize, oh, there's lots of rules about this, just how you put out a robe on the line. To wipe the line first, and you have to stay with your robe until it's dry in case it falls off the line. We didn't have plastic pegs in those days. Maybe you had a bamboo peg. But the wind could come, your robe could fall off and get dirty or damaged. Sometimes you got animals would come. Outside the forest there might be fields with buffalo or oxen, and the ox like to pull on a monk's robe. They could chew it. So if you don't keep an eye on your robe when it's out on the line, the ox would come and pull it off. End up with a chewed up robe. So we practiced watching our robes when they're drying and then folding them, keeping them carefully. Same with the bowl. In the time of the Buddha, they were often using clay bowls, which broke, so we have lots of rules about where we can put our bowl. We can't walk along swinging our bowl because it might crack and break. You can't put your bowl on the edge of a table or a high shelf because it might fall off. You have to think about how you look after your bowl, so it makes you very mindful. Mindfulness of your robe, mindfulness of your bowl. It makes you mindful how you walk, where you store things. Ajahn Chah used to joke about the monk who left his bowl lid off. Like when you stored your bowl at night, you usually left your bowl lid open a little bit, just maybe 1 centimetre or half an inch to let some air in to keep your bowl free from smell, because you eat food in it every day. If you're not careful, it becomes smelly, even though you wash it. This monk left his bowl open at night, and so a rat went in, and he had a bowl wiping cloth that you would keep inside the bowl, and the rat went into and sat on the cloth and fell asleep. And when he got up in the morning, he was really late for alms round. You go on at alms round at dawn into the village, so he rushed, picked his bowl up and ran for it to catch up with the other monks so that he didn't get embarrassed. And when he opened his bowl, where the first line of villagers to offer rice were, he opened the bowl and a rat jumped out on the first lady who was putting rice in his bowl. He didn't even know there was a rat in his bowl. My experience was that we were in that first monastery I stayed in. They were infested with toads because it was rainy season. The Vasa is the rainy season in Thailand. And the whole monastery got full of toads, big toads. And they like to go into monks' bowls. If you left your bowl lid off, they'd go into the bowl and sit there all night because it's kind of safe. And most people, if they found a toad or a frog in their bowl, they'd just laugh and tip it out and clean the bowl up. There's one monk who was very tough. He'd been sent to the monastery to ordain by his mum because he was in a gang and he kept getting into these gang fights. He had a huge scar all the way down his head and his face from where someone had buried a machete into his skull. He didn't die. So after that, his mum sent him off to the monastery to become a monk. He was a very nice guy, even though he knew how to fight and had been in a gang. But we found out that he was also a little bit of a coward or afraid of certain things. He appeared like a tough guy on the outside, but because he wasn't mindful of how he stored his monk's bowl, he left the lid off one night. The toad went in. When we finished our morning meditation session and we were getting ready to go out into the village at dawn, it was still a little bit dark and he didn't realise. He opened the lid of his bowl to clean it and the toad jumped out onto him. The toad is as big as your fist. And he screamed and went running out into the forest. He dropped his bowl and went running off because he was so afraid of toads. So for that day he was very embarrassed because the little novices who were teenagers, were a bit afraid of him because he'd been in a gang. Now they saw his weakness, they couldn't stop laughing. So he had to face up to the embarrassment of having a fear of toads. It makes you mindful of your bowl, doesn't it? If you have the possibility things can go into your bowl, creepy crawlies, and you become mindful where you store it, how you store it. You look after it, because you've only got one bowl. Occasionally monks pick up the wrong bowl if it's in the dark. You're not mindful of where you put it down, you go and pick someone else's bowl up. So the monastic training, everything to do with bowls and food, robes, your lodgings where you stay, the room, the kuti in the forest. We have all these rules and practices, and they're to make us mindful of the things we use, the activities we're involved with, the time of day, what the routine is, how you're using your body, the posture, standing, walking, sitting, lying down. This is what we call mindfulness in daily life. In the monastic setting, because it is quiet, simple, it heightens that level of mindfulness. Whereas in the world we know we're always complaining about how complicated things are, how many activities there are, how busy we are. We have so many possessions we don't even know what we got in the lay life. The thought of having rules about how you fold your clothes and where you put them and how you store them, you wouldn't know where to start. Of course you can be mindful in the daily life, but it's just more challenging, difficult. So the monastic setting helps you to be mindful. Lots of rules about the way to eat, and when you eat, you don't make a noise. The Buddha said, don't clank your bowl and the food and slurp it. Don't lick your lips, don't lick your fingers, don't spill food all over the place. Don't make a mess. If someone passes you something, you have to clean your hand first. Don't have a messy hand because you've been eating food and then you grab something that's communal, like a dish or a water kettle or something. Clean your hand first. And don't go peering into another monk's bowl, because you might start disapproving about how much food he's taken or what he's taken. You might become either envious or look down on him. You just look at your own bowl. It's good enough. Just being mindful of what you're eating is hard enough. You're going to start judging other people, becoming mindful of them. Well, you'll become very confused and very emotional. Another part of the monastic training that makes you mindful is one we call acharyavata. It means serving the teacher. In a monastery we have a preceptor, Upajjhaya, who ordains us. He has a duty to train us in the Vinaya, in the training, in the Dhamma, and to keep focused on us. That's what a preceptor means. An Upajjhaya means one who focuses on their students. But we don't always live with the preceptor. Sometimes we do. Sometimes we live with a teacher. So the preceptor will hand down the student to a teacher, an acharya. So we have the modern word Ajahn. Thai word is Ajahn, comes from acharya. So the teacher looks after the student for the preceptor, and they have to train them in the Vinaya, in the Dhamma. It's a two-way thing. The teacher trains the student looks after the teacher. Looking after the teacher even means sometimes we point out a fault in the teacher if they make a mistake, what they're saying, say the wrong thing, or they're wearing their robes incorrectly, or they break a rule or something. But you have to do it in the proper way. You have to ask permission. You have to establish your mind in goodwill and ask the teacher with respect and kindness. Say, oh, is that correct, what you've done, what you said? Like the young novice who bravely corrected Venerable Sariputta, who was an arahant, when he was wearing his robe loosely. They weren't neat and tidy, because that's another one of our rules. We have to wear our robes neatly all round. He said, oh, Venerable Sir, you've unmindfully let your robe dangle. It's trailing in front of him, which happens when you rush to put it on. Your robe may trail along the ground behind you or in front of you. It's not even. The little novice put up his hands in Anjali. He said, oh, Venerable Sir, your robe is not even. And because Sariputta loved the Vinaya, the training, and he was mindful, he didn't just get angry. Who are you telling me, the big Sariputta, you shouldn't be telling me off. He said, oh, thank you for pointing out my careless mistake. This is what we call admonition in the monastery, where you help someone to become mindful. Maybe they're breaking a rule, not doing something correctly, even if they're senior. We do that. But more often than not, it's the senior monk telling the junior or the student, the new one, what to do, because they often don't know. They have to remind them or explain out of compassion. Teach them how to meditate, teach them how to reflect on Dhamma, what is skillful, what is unskillful, teach them to be mindful, teach them the rules, remind them of the rules. Full-time job. And the student will also look after the teacher as part of the training. We call it Charyavata. So the Buddha said the student will get up earlier than the teacher. If we did a survey of all the Buddhist monasteries in the world, I'm not sure all the students are getting up earlier than the teachers. Often the student is lying in a bit maybe, but the idea, the Buddha said, the student gets up before the teacher, sets out the water for the teacher to have a wash. That's the trouble with comfort and convenience. Now you just have a tap. In the old days we didn't have tap water. You had to haul the water from a well, either with a cart or on your shoulders or through buckets. You take the water to the teacher's hut, you fill a jar so they could have a bath or a wash in the morning. If it's cold season, you actually boiled water for the teacher. Water to drink, water to have a wash, warm water. As an act of service. You clean the hut, clean the robes, look after the bowl, all kinds of service. And Ajahn Chah emphasised this because again it's to bring up mindfulness in daily life. People often say, what should I be mindful of? Well, if you're doing a job of work, you're sweeping leaves, you're cleaning a building, a room, that becomes your object of mindfulness. As well as if you're sitting watching your breath, well, your breath becomes your object of mindfulness. There's many things you can be mindful of. With Acharya, with the teacher, serving the teacher, your teacher becomes the object of mindfulness. So it's like you've always got one eye on the teacher. Do they need something? How are they? Are they ill? Are they injured? Do they need assistance in some way? When I first went there, if you saw a senior monk, not just Ajahn Chah, but maybe a senior monk who was 10, 20 reigns, they're considered a teacher as well. A Thera means an elder. If you saw them carrying something, you rush up and you pick it, you put your hands in Anjali, show respect there, can I carry that for you? Maybe a box of books or some tools or firewood or something. You receive the teacher's bowl, take it to wash, receive his robe, take it to wash. It's a very good mindfulness practice. One, you keep your eye on the teacher and what their needs are, but also you have a chance to really develop insight into not self, because you're doing the practice because it's what the Buddha taught. It's a training to be done. This is independent of whether you like the person or not. The personality of that teacher or that senior monk, you may like them, you may find them inspiring, enjoyable to be with, full of good, wise sayings, restrained, peaceful, or they may not be. So they may be more abrasive or gruff, or you may think you know more than them. But that's not the point. The whole point is you're letting go of your own ego, sense of self, by serving. Because it's the Vinaya, it's the rules. This is mindfulness in daily life. Can you put aside your preferences? I like this guy, I don't like that guy. This one knows a lot, this one doesn't seem to know anything. That's the way we are in the world. We pick and choose. And that's why the world is full of conflict. The Vinaya, you pick the Vinaya. You do the correct thing according to Vinaya rather than your preference. So even if you don't particularly like a senior monk, you still serve them. And a little bit of your ego drops away and you have an insight into not self. The impermanent nature of your mood that might be triggered. Why do I have to help this monk? I don't like him. He talks too much, or he's always telling me off, or does this, does that. You let go of that as you serve. Or maybe you have fear. Sometimes some teachers are very mindful, very wise, very advanced in their practice. You're very almost afraid of them because they're so mindful. You know that you'll be exposed. This guy, he's so mindful, and you're just talking too much or too distracted or falling asleep or not doing something you should be doing. So some monks get afraid of a teacher. Ajahn Chah, some monks were too afraid to go anywhere near him. If Ajahn Chah came into the room, they scurry away, get out of sight. Not because they thought he was dangerous. You always felt you're safe with the teacher, but because he's so mindful, they almost feel awkward because they know they're not very mindful. And they have a sense of shame, humility, shame, awareness. This is the teacher. I better be careful not to put a foot wrong, not to say the wrong thing, do the wrong thing. Other monks, the opposite. They want to be with the teacher because the mindfulness and the wisdom and the compassion of the teacher draws all these good qualities out. So they often want to stay close to the teacher. And the practice of Acharya is like that. It helps you to get closer to the teacher. So you can listen to them, be with them, absorb all kinds of good things from the teacher, see their habits, see how they live. Different junior monks would react differently to the senior. Sometimes they're not happy. Sometimes not willing to serve. You hear them sometimes, I don't want to wash his robes. His robes smell, I don't like him. But then they're giving into the moods, and the attachment, the craving comes up, and they can't let go of it yet. So the Vinaya is actually a vehicle. The different aspects of it are a vehicle, not just for living in a way where you're living simply, peacefully, but it's actually a vehicle for developing insight into anicca, dukkha, anatta, impermanence, suffering, not self. At Wat Pao Pong, you have to get up. 3 a.m. there's a bell. Everyone has to get up. So it's the sound that people often like the least. They're the most aversion comes up when the morning bell comes. But it's the rule, you get up, and that's the Vinaya training. You're rising above maybe your desire to sleep, be lazy. Ajahn Chah used to say, the Vinaya does not make you lazy, it makes you energetic. And the Buddha did not teach anyone to be lazy. Nobody who got enlightened because they were lazy. They got enlightened because they put forth effort. When you come into the monastery, maybe you don't have much effort yet, but then you develop it through the training. It's all about developing effort, energy, setting aside your moods and doing whatever the right thing is. It's a way of training. Sometimes the senior monks got privileges. They got, like Ajahn Chah always used to have the best food. People would offer him special food. He was at the head of the line. And sometimes other senior monks, they'd be offered maybe robe cloth. When I first became a monk, there was almost no robe cloth. Very small amount of good quality cloth to make a robe. My first robe was made from the cheapest cloth that was normally used for kind of foot wiping rags. It didn't last very long. The quality was just not very good. It fell apart in the tropics, in the heat, the moisture, the way the cloth is. It kind of degenerates over time. The effect of water, humidity on it can go mouldy as well. So it didn't last long. But the best cloth went to the senior monks. It's just the way it worked usually. They'd get the best food, the best cloth. And often they'd share it, but still it went to them first because it goes according to hierarchy of seniority. It's just who ordains first. Whether they're young, old, whether they know a lot or little, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's just whoever is ordained first, sits first, so then they get the food offered first, or other requisites go to them first. So some monks would get jealous. Why does he get all the food? The idea is for you to see attachment as a chance to really see your own craving and attachment and let go. In the monastic life is very simple, so your craving and attachment centers around very simple little things. Out in the world it's so dispersed you never notice it. You've got dozens of clothing articles and dozens of possessions in your house. Your craving and attachment is dispersed over such a wide range of material things and experiences that you hardly notice it. In the monastery, everything is reduced down to a few things. One meal a day. So of course, whatever food you get is important. The type of food, how much, the quality, whether it suits your taste or not. So if somebody else gets something that you don't, or you may think about it. You may bring up aversion or jealousy. Sometimes monks would make huge sacrifice. some nice bit of food that came their way, they would share it. Some monks would receive a nice bit of food and then share it with their friends or send it down the line to someone who was sitting at the end of the line, maybe had less food. Sometimes monks received a gift, maybe from their family or somebody, and they might offer it to the teacher first. Even though the teacher did receive a lot of gifts, they did it out of respect for the teacher. Sometimes monks would get very attached to their kuti in the forest. Maybe it was a newly built kuti, so they liked it because it was new, maybe well built or bigger. At Ajahn Chah's monastery, a few of them had toilets, but most of them not. They're just old, mouldy wooden kutis full of geckos, lizards and mosquitoes. Not so nice. But there was a few good ones, so if a monk got in a good one, he didn't want to give that up. But the rule is, you had to go to the kuti you're assigned, and sometimes they assign someone else to a kuti you wanted or that you had been in before. Maybe you leave the monastery, you come back, you don't get the same kuti again. You have to give up to the rule. That's the rule. So sometimes there'd be a grumpy monk who didn't get the kuti he wanted, or he lost the kuti he wanted. The idea is not to make anyone unhappy or jealous or attached. The idea is to help you see these things, see the mood, see the craving, see the attachment. That's what the monastic life is for. So it's not always easy. At home it's easy. You just do what you want, when you want. In the monastery, you have to follow the routine, the rules, practice restraint, mindfulness, give up various desires and clingings. And you don't always get much choice in it. It happens. You have to give up, or else you just sit there suffering or stuck suffering with your own moods. And it's not very pleasant, is it? In the monastery you can't really escape your mood, your suffering, so the only escape is to see it as impermanent, not self, and then you let go. At home, you just find a distraction. Comfort, eating, surfing the net, sleeping, doing whatever you want. So this is why the monastic setting is, you might call it fast track to Nibbana. You're going to burn off your defilements quicker, but it's hard work. You have to be patient and do and practice. And you can't stay in the monastery if you want to just follow your preferences. You're in the wrong place. So some people can't stay, they don't last. We have a joke. In the old days, the bowls, monks' bowls were made of clay, and later on they're made of iron. A clay or an iron bowl you have to really look after carefully, because an iron bowl can get rusty when you dent it, you can get a hole in it. And my first bowl had 3 holes in it. The clay bowl could crack and break. So you really had to look after it. The saying was, you want to be a monk for life, so you receive a bowl, you only get 1 bowl, so you look after it with your life. Protect it. You're very careful. But nowadays the bowls are made of stainless steel. Stainless steel is quite durable. That's why they're made of them. That's why we use so many things made out of stainless steel, because they last a long time. So maybe nowadays the bowls last longer than the monk. Stainless steel bowl can easily last for 50 years if you look after it. But now the monks don't last 50 years. 5 or 10 years maybe already gone. So that's the joke. The bowl now, it's the outlast the monk. It used to be the monk outlast the bowl. You have to ask yourself, What kind of monk am I? Am I going to be the one who outlasts the bowl, or is the bowl going to outlast me? Everyone, when they start, they're given a bowl from someone else. The previous monk's bowl who's disrobed, and then you get it. So mine had 3 holes in it, very heavy. The other thing Luang Por Chah used to say at this time, the end of the year, the end of the Vasa, he'd say, whoa, end of the Vasa, does that mean the end of the practice? Do you stop practicing? If you're a layperson, do you stop keeping the precepts, stop meditating, stop offering dana, listening to the Dhamma, go off on your holidays and do all these other things? If you're a monk, do you stop practicing, stop meditating, do you disrobe, or do you just go off on wandering around from place to place and then losing steam, then you disrobe? Or do you keep up the practice? Do you keep meditating, keep listening to the Dhamma, keep training? The Vasa is a convenient period of time. It's 3 months. It's a retreat. But then it's just 3 months. So what do you do after the 3 months? Do you carry on practicing or not? So I'll encourage you all to keep practicing, Sangha and laity. Just because it's the end of the rains doesn't mean to say anything has to change very much. Keep up your efforts. The more we put into the practice, the more we get back from it. So maybe I'll leave you with these reflections tonight.